All right, let's start with some new good news about GPU prices. So over at Tom's Hardware, they've been tracking retail and eBay prices. And I've seen that graphics cards prices slid another 14% in June and down a total of 57% since January. The dark times are over. If you hop into some of their details, they do have some nice charts here. Looking at the eBay prices as of July 1st, as well as the eBay price on January 1st. You can see the year-to-date change, as well as retail price on July 1st. So we can look at retail compared to eBay, and we can look at the overall GPU MSRP. And then this can get them some useful calculations, like our year-to-date change on eBay, the retail versus eBay pricing, so what percent more are you spending on a retail card versus buying it on eBay? And remember, buying on eBay means you might be getting a used mining GPU, which isn't necessarily the end of the world, but depending on how well maintained that was, I mean, it's just something to consider. And then we can also look at retail versus MSRP. So we can see which cards are at MSRP, below MSRP, how much below MSRP, above MSRP. So we can start to see that the overall cards, if we look at the retail versus MSRP, the cards with the overall inflated MSRPs, the Halo product type cards, or the price gouged type cards, like price gouge, I would call the 3080 Ti, which launched when the GPU prices were terrible, at a horrible MSRP compared to the MSRP of the 3080, which obviously wasn't really an attainable price at the time, so Nvidia could do that. We're seeing those cards dipping below MSRP now. The GeForce RTX 3090 is unfortunately only a little bit below its MSRP in the retail market, but you can see that on the eBay pricing, we're starting to see them available for around $1,000. So that's one of the places where you can see a huge advantage to buying on eBay versus retail, although whether that thing's been mined with high memory temperatures for a year and a half now, I don't know. And then, so we can overall track that card by card. The RTX 3070 Ti is one of the cards that's still sitting above its MSRP, which is a little bit annoying, as well as the 3070, at least if you're on the retail market. Whereas you might be able to get a little bit better deals on the used market here. Again, the 3060, so it's really these mid-range and lower-range NVIDIA GPUs, at least on the retail market, are still sitting well above their MSRPs, and you can get better deals on eBay, but honestly, these eBay prices aren't that shockingly low or great on these lower end cards. The AMD GPUs, though, on the other hand, I think are looking a lot more attractive. Although some of these had some kind of funny stats. We've got another chart here, which I think is pretty interesting, which has the FPS per dollar pricing. And I believe this is also based on the eBay average price. So we're looking at some average prices on eBay. We can see FPS per dollar as well as gross sales. And I thought this was interesting because we can see what's actually selling in a high volume on eBay. Whereas, we're seeing almost like $1 million of sales on RTX 3090s. The 3090 Ti's seem a lot less popular, and you might see why when you see the FPS per dollar being significantly lower there. If we track it this way, I think some standouts when it comes to FPS per dollar are definitely the RX 6600 and the 6600 XT seem to be offering some of the best performance per dollar, as well as this RX 6700 XT. So if you're not hung up on you have to have NVIDIA, you have to have ray tracing, well, at these lower performance tiers, even the NVIDIA competitors and price point don't have great ray tracing. And I mean, are there even NVIDIA competitors at this price point that have ray tracing? Can you actually buy much for $258, for example? Now, one thing that was interesting to me is that look at the sales volumes on the RX 6400. They've sold $460 worth of them. and the 6500 XT is not doing significantly better. Also, the 6750 XT not selling a lot on eBay. Although some of these newer /50 models, I mean, they're newer cards. There's going to be less of a used supply of those just because they are newer. Now, they've also got a few other charts here looking back at the 20 series cards from Nvidia. And some of these are starting to reach some pretty good performance per dollar numbers, similar to what we were seeing from some of those AMD cards. So if you have to have Nvidia, maybe you'd consider a used 20 series card, since the pricing is starting to get a lot more reasonable here. But, you know, again, getting into used cards right now is a little bit possibly concerning, given just how long those might have been mined. Now, on the topic of GPU pricing and the demand diminishing, we're seeing reports here. Now, when we dig into the source on this, this isn't, I think, super official. This might be true. But we're seeing rumors that Nvidia is wanting to cut down their 5nm wafer orders for their next-gen GeForce RTX 40 series. Because as crypto demand is diminishing, the crypto prices are dropping. Well, we're seeing a lower demand in GPUs and prices going down. And we're also seeing a huge stock of 30 series cards that still need to sell through, even as we're getting closer to the 40 series release dates on this. So it's looking like Nvidia might have had a whole bunch of production secured for 5nm chips, but then that was back when GPUs sold at basically any price instantly. And then now they're like, wait a minute. We might have paid a little bit too much here if the crypto stuff is drying up. Now, the sources on this are a report from DigiTimes, and then I think this is like translated, and I don't know. But yeah, along with the same report, it is also looking like AMD has done some reduction on their 7/6nm by about 20,000 pieces, yet its 5nm PC and server orders have not been revised, and they're willing to accept price increases. So it looks like AMD is still kind of maintaining their orders on this stuff. So anyway, we'll see what happens with this. It is certainly interesting to see changes in the market. Now let's hop into, again, rumors rather than confirmed results here, but these are very interesting in the CPU space. So the, how should I put this? The Digimon over here, Greymon55, is first of all saying that we could see new Zen3D products, and this could even be on AM4 platforms. And now Zen3D, again, you have your 5800X3D, which had, in some games especially, massive gaming performance increases by upping the cache on the chip with the 3D V-cache technology. And this was very successful, but it's only been on this one CPU, and this CPU is pretty expensive. Also, in gaming, a lot of times, you know, a 6-core CPU would be fine. We don't really need the 8 cores in many games, so could we get a cheaper 3D V-cache AM4 chip? That would be really exciting, but to be clear, we don't know. Okay, this is a Digimon tweeting on Twitter. This is not a press release from AMD. Now, this is also very interesting. There will also be new low-end AM4 products in the future. So low-end AM4 products in the future. Now, there's already some pretty low-end AM4 products that are so low with such high price that I don't think they're particularly interesting. But we'll see what might come from that. Now, this is really interesting to me. So, once again, our Digimon, but now replying to Mos Maiorum, is that the term for, like, the old Roman, like, cultural values before the decline of the Republic? I don't know, man. Anyway, but the Digimon has something to say to that. So the speculation here was maybe use a Zen 4 CPU die with the 12 nanometer existing I/O die for AM4. In other words, okay, we've got these new Zen 4 CPUs coming out, but they have to go on this new AM5 platform. What if you just put a Zen 4 CPU die into an I/O that would fit into your AM4 motherboard? So for example, a 5 nanometer 5.5 gigahertz Zen 4 CPU with DDR4 and PCIe 4. Now this would be really interesting. Now Greymon, who may or may not really know things, has had a track record, especially with AMD, of leaking some things accurately ahead of time, is saying AM4 Zen 4 does exist in the lab, but whether it will be mass produced is entirely up to AMD. Now, personally, I would love to see this. Now, why would we maybe even want something like this? I mean, for one thing, it's just nice to further extend the life of the AM4 platform. But I'm a little bit concerned about budget-conscious PC builders with the AM5 platform, because the AM5 platform doesn't support DDR4. It's DDR5 only. And while DDR5 pricing has been coming down significantly, it's still more expensive than DDR4. So it would be very interesting if we did see an AM4 capable Zen 4 CPU that could then use your existing DDR4. This would be a really interesting budget option, but whether AMD would want to do that or could do that, remains to be seen. So I would not get my hopes up about that, but it's really cool if it did end up being true. I would be a big fan for budget PC builders or people upgrading an older system. Now, let's talk about Intel Arc GPUs. So, they did finally, in recent drivers, offer a toggle switch to turn off their benchmark-specific 3D Mark optimizations, which then look like they drop the performance by about 15%. Now, that's a good thing if you want the benchmarks to have anything to do with the reality of their actual gaming performance. And so now seeing these actually tested and revealing these results is interesting, and it's a bit frustrating that Intel had this, on their basically this allowed them to market their 3D Mark scores as putting them much more competitive with other GPUs than they actually are in gaming. Guys, I didn't pull up the video here as a reference, but if you watch Linus Tech Tips, they have a review of an Intel Arc A370M laptop, and it looks bad. They said they had all sorts of drivers issues. Some games wouldn't even run when they tried to run the benchmarks. Just absolute headaches. It looks like it could be interesting for a video editing and coding kind of application if the software actually worked consistently. But anyway, you could take a look at that if you want to see some actual US-based reviews from a major outlet, because a lot of what we've been seeing on Intel Arc has been kind of coming out of China through translation layers and all of that. So yeah, that Linus Tech Tips video could be an interesting watch if you want to see them complain about the current state of the software and driver support. Now, how about FSR 2.0 coming out in Dying Light 2, except not really. It's through a mod. So this is now the second game we've seen take the DLSS implementation in a game. The first time we saw this happen was Cyberpunk. And then utilize the DLL file for DLSS to then include the FSR 2.0 actual code. And then you're basically converting the DLSS implementation in the game into an FSR 2.0 implementation in the game. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, if you don't have a GPU that can run DLSS, this would then allow it to run on AMD GPUs, or, you got a GTX 1060, 1080, something like that. Still decent GPUs, but you could get a big performance uplift. Now, this video cards article reporting on it does run through the process of doing this, and you can check the link in my description. Although, while image quality gains are certainly noticeable here, and now this is interesting, this screenshot is comparing FSR 1.0 Ultra Quality up against FSR 2.0 performance mode. And in a still screenshot, you can actually see, especially if you look at like trying to read the signs and such here, it does appear to have a little bit more detail on even on performance mode on FSR 2.0. Although in my personal testing, I'll tell you that the real drawbacks to FSR 2.0 will be more noticed in motion due to its temporal issues, and that the modded in versions of this might not be tuned as well to this particular game as they maybe could have been if they were released by the actual game devs. So this is cool, could be fun to play around with, although I'll also mention that anytime you're doing a mod, be aware that you could mess things up. Also, this being a multiplayer game, I would want to be careful. I don't know if there's any anti-cheat in this game that could flag something like this, but you would want to be careful of that. Now, take a look at this. You want to waste some money on a GPU. How about a 3090 Ti Kingpin? Actually, I don't mind this, just in the sense that this is obviously for people who are pursuing extreme overclocking. This is not somebody looking for a value gaming GPU. So if you want to pursue extreme overclocking at the tail end of this graphics card generation, here you go, the 3090 Ti Kingpin for $2,500, but don't worry, to sweeten the deal, they're going to throw in a free Supernova 1600 P2 power supply, which is 80 plus platinum 1600 watt power supply. Now, this GPU actually supports dual 16-pin power connectors, but the problem is that this power supply actually doesn't support PCI 16-pin power connectors, so you would need some sort of an adapter. Now, EVGA has this cool PowerLink thing here, although in this article they mentioned it's unclear whether or not that actually comes with this package or whether you would have to purchase that separately. Now, this GPU has like a hybrid design where you have a fan on the GPU, but you also have a triple fan radiator, and also has 3 BIOS switches. So I think the switches would be designed between like normal cooling, well, I don't know what it was for. Yeah, OC, normal mode, OC mode, and LN2, because, you might want to pour some LN2 on here to set some world records. Anyway, this might interest a very small niche of extreme overclockers, but there you go. That's quite a bit. Now, this would be interesting if new high-end GPUs have to bundle with power supplies that can actually be capable of running them. Now, last thing I'll mention here is Moore's Law is Dead had a video talking about upcoming motherboard designs and release dates from Intel. It's looking like most of the big info here, and again, I'm doing the video cards article that's reporting on this, is mentioning that the Z790 can support Gen 5 M.2 SSDs, which would put it on a feature parity there with AM5 from AMD, but some won't support it. And again, AMD, a lot of the distinctions between their various AM5 chipsets is how much of these M.2 Gen 5 and such support we get on the motherboard. He's looking at Intel probably showing off the Z790 either at the end of July or even later into August. Now, I believe his color coding here is that these are his less, the white here is less confident, but boards could begin validation in August before production, and even if Raptor Lake is ready before Z790, Intel will almost certainly make it wait for board makers to be ready with Z790. All right, so that'll be interesting to see, and again, you get a lot more details here and thoughts from Moore's Law is Dead if you take a look at his video directly. But that's what I've got for you today. I hope you have an excellent day.